John Keeger has written a very interesting article in The Spectator today about what we can learn from World War One, about bracing ourselves for World War Three, and it becomes evident that Keeger skillfully invokes the First World War's complex causes as a means to frame contemporary concerns about global conflict. And the piece resonates with reflections on the unpredictable cumulative events that can lead to catastrophic war, underscoring lessons not only for historians but also for policymakers and for modern observers. And Keeger's opening, which nods to Remembrance Sunday today, poignantly reminds readers of the gravity of commemoration, why it's so important to look back, to commemorate, to reverence the past. It's not merely an act of honouring those who fell, but also a moment to interrogate the mechanisms that precipitate such immense losses and that lead the world to that point of off balance. This thematic framing sets the stage for the article's central question: what can the prelude to the Great War teach us about our current global tension? And he quotes Alan Clark's sardonic 1983 diary entry, "Archduke found alive, World War a mistake." And Keeger establishes a tone that interweaves gravity with historical irony. And the inclusion of this quip hints at how the meaning of pivotal events can elude particularly those who are living through them. And here Keeger subtly critiques the contemporary armchair punditry that often oversimplifies global crises with predictions of World War III, particularly with the immediacy and the loquacity of social media. Social media is garrulous, and he urges us to a more nuanced and historically informed perspective. Pause before drawing conclusions. Debate, discuss, muse, cogitate, masticate, but chew on this, on the fact, but don't try to avoid all these thumping demands, the thumping demands, and possibly humour is important here. The examination of structural versus personal causes behind the outbreak of war is particularly illuminating. While acknowledging the impersonal forces, the nationalism, the militarism, the economic competition, the alliance systems, Keeger insists that individual decisions, misunderstandings, personalities ultimately catalysed the First World War. It's an interesting take because it flies in the face of the sort of history making that we encourage in schools, where we want these sort of great movements, these great events. Whereas in fact it's often, we go back to the sort of history of our grandparents, where it's individuals who make decisions. It's a reminder that however strong underlying tensions may be, human agency plays a decisive role. And often it's where the human agents feel they have lost their decision-making. The spectre of influential figures such as the Kaiser Wilhelm II, implicitly juxtaposed with current leaders whose unpredictable behaviour could similarly lead to destabilisation. Keeger's reference to the long European peace between 1815 and 1914 and the relatively minor conflicts during that time, well, save the Boer War and the Crimean War, and I suppose there is a resonance there. It's the critical question posed by some historians: why did peace end rather than why did war start? I think that's an interesting question. This angle enriches our understanding by shifting from the inevitability of conflict to its preventability. It prompts the reader to consider whether the current global situation mirrors that period's fragile détente, wherein a single spark might ignite a wider conflagration. The death of the Archduke and his pregnant wife, the building of bigger ships, posturing, the fragmentation of alliances, the determination of alliances. The article's contemporary relevance is most evident when Keeger recalls Sir Harry Hinsley's theory on general wars following major power shifts, drawing an implicit parallel to current power dynamics. Today, with the rise of China and a resurgent Russia, countered by a relatively stagnant Western alliance, the echoes of Hinsley's theory resound ominously, and this notion asks the reader to evaluate whether today's international order, like that of 1915, is primed for missteps because of the recalibrated power balance, and can that be avoided? The cautionary tale of 1914 is deepened through the anecdote of John F. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and Keeger's reference to Kennedy's instruction for his team to read The Guns of August demonstrates how historical lessons informed effective crisis management then. The underlying message is clear. Understanding the past is crucial to navigating present threats. Understanding the past can help us to deal with the present. Robert McNamara's assertion, "Today there is no longer any such thing as military strategy, there is only crisis management," emphasizes that war in the modern era is not solely won on battlefields, but in the careful choreography of decisions taken under immense pressure. Keeger's allusion to McNamara reflects a challenge to contemporary leaders. Do they possess the diplomatic and strategic foresight needed to avert catastrophe in the first place? Yet Keeger leaves room for questioning his analysis. Are current global tensions truly comparable to the pre-1914 environment? While Keeger wisely draws attention to the erosion of what Henry Kissinger calls the sense of the tragic, the modern world possesses new mechanisms of deterrence, communication, and political complexity that were absent in 1914. Nuclear weapons, instantaneous communication, and a more interconnected global economy serve as both checks and potential amplifiers of conflict. Therefore, while the First World War offers rich analogies about the power dynamics of the elite politicians, one must ask whether today's leaders, aware of past missteps, are indeed as prone to miscalculation or sleepwalking into disaster as their predecessors. Keeger's piece is a compelling reminder of history's cautionary tales, underscoring that while structural forces may create the conditions for conflict, it is the failure of leadership and decision-making that seals our fate. His analysis invites readers to consider if the lessons of the past, when peace was lost through hubris, through miscommunication or overconfidence, are being heeded or ignored. I think together with this Keeger article, we need to reread The Economic Consequences of the Peace by Maynard Keynes. This article prompts us to question whether the spectres of 1914 haunt today's world as closely as some might claim. Do the spectres of this foolish peace of 1918 haunt us? Or are we going to take note of John Maynard Keynes' advice about punishing transgressors? Again, we come back to this issue about the absurdity of sanctions. Or are contemporary statesmen capable of truly internalizing these lessons in ways that history could not have foreseen? I think we are so obsessed with the pre-World War II appeasement horror that we forget the lessons of pre-World War I and post-World War I, which in so many ways lay the groundwork for the development of World War II. World War II was an inevitability given World War I and the way it finished, and indeed, in many ways, the way it started. We need to look at these three areas, and too often we are obsessed by appeasement.